Just when you think you've read every type of dragon story out there, something like this comes along. His Majesty's Dragon, the first book in the Temeraire series, was written by Naomi Novik and was published in 2006. It tells the story of William Lawrence, captain of the British Royal Navy, and his companionship with the dragon Temeraire. This is actually an alternate history story set during the start of the 19th century. I have to admit, I do have a soft spot for alternate history stories. However, that's not the only way Novik chose to make her dragon stand out. Dragons in this world are common enough that multiple countries have adopted them into military service. Different breeds have different abilities, like enhanced night vision or stamina. Most dragons cannot breathe fire, but there are some who can spit acid. Most of the dragons the book mentions fight for either England or France during the Napoleonic War. However, rather than have dragons simply fight with a single rider, like what we've seen in Aragon or the Dragon Riders of Pern, dragons are strapped with a large harness and have an entire crew service them, much like a ship at sea. Dragons each have a captain, a first lieutenant, several midshipmen, called midwingmen, and a ground crew. This small trait of the book actually led into many fascinating aspects of not only military life, but life in general with a dragon. The book is told in third-person limited perspective, following Captain Lawrence as he and Temeraire form a strong bond by training together, discovering the world, and defending England side by side. Lawrence is a fish out of water, so to speak. After building a career in the reputable Navy, circumstances then force him to pair with Temeraire and join the less-than-stellar Aerial Corps. The Corps still plays an important role in defending Britain, but the members within are much less organized and are held to a lower standard. So much so that Lawrence is seen as something of a hard-ass with his disciplinary style, and yet this is what makes him such a great captain and leader. He gets his crew into shape and ready for war in the need that they'll have to fight. Spoilers, they fight. He's even able to inspire his lackadaisical first lieutenant and earned himself a respectable position among his peers. In a lot of ways, this was great because Novik either has a lot of leadership experience under her belt, or she understands what is expected of and demanded of someone in the leadership position. In some ways, though, this made the read a little rough. Lawrence is a proper gentleman and a soldier, and that shows in all his mannerisms. So much so that he rarely steps out of line, even when he's upset. This is okay for the first few chapters when we're still getting to know him, Temeraire, and the world in general, but Lawrence is a bit stuffy. As the chapters went on, I found myself respecting Lawrence as a person, but found him a bit dull as a protagonist. And the stakes get raised only in the last few chapters, so until then, it's up to our dragon and captain duo to keep us entertained. After a while, I found myself watching Lawrence, hoping he'd just get visibly upset at something. Yes, there are a few things that tick him off, but only once does he express any real kind of outrage. And even then, the scene was somewhat muted. Still, he's a good person at heart and easy to root for, so there is that. Temeraire is a different story. Dragons are intelligent, can talk from birth, and can use logic. The older dragons are pretty much what you'd expect, using wisdom and experience to teach others in that wizened tone we've all come to expect from dragons. Some of the younger dragons are on par with moderately intelligent children, though Temeraire grows out of this phase by the end of the book. He's marked as special throughout the whole story though, being a rare breed that's almost exclusively seen in China, which gives England a distinct advantage when they adopt them into their forces. I felt that while I enjoyed seeing Temeraire hatch from his egg and then grow throughout the book, I couldn't help but feel that the author was afraid to really push his limits. This, combined with the fact that Temeraire gains an incredibly rare ability out of nowhere in the final battle, really veers him towards Mary Sue territory. He doesn't quite get that bad, but several of the elements are there. Another issue that the book suffered from was the pacing. It starts off well enough, with a gentle pace to get the reader accustomed to Lawrence's introduction to dragons, but this pace becomes a constant throughout and rarely picks up. In some ways this works because it allows the reader time to gain a solid understanding of the world and of the characters, but there's very little action to be had here. So when we get 50 pages in a row about boot camp procedures with little else to break up the monotony, the story tends to drag. Still, there are enough creative elements, such as dressing dragons in special jewelry made just for them, which can keep your interest, so it's not like the book is a complete slog to get through. And amusingly enough, I felt that the book was reading my mind at times. I would occasionally think about how good it would be to see something particular happen in canon, and usually within that same chapter, the book made it happen. The pacing may be off, but at least my interest was held. Something else of interest was the daily interactions we see between captains and their dragons. Unlike many other dragon novels, we do see detailed military procedure between training and daily life. However, we see it through two lenses. The first is the dreary status quo that the other captains and their dragons live. The second is through Lawrence's perspective, who is very lenient towards Temeraire's activities outside of training. Lawrence dotes on his dragon, almost spoiling him. Seemingly minor ideas, like removing a dragon's harness when not in use, are unusual for the other captains to even consider. This is obviously the result of Lawrence not being raised in the same environment as his peers and not understanding all of their traditions. Upon further consideration, this seems somewhat in contrast to his professional, disciplined stance, but this could also be a transformation that Temeraire squeezed out of him. The dragon's youthful excitement and energy prodded Lawrence into a kinder, more fatherly attitude, rather than being one's captain. I could probably make an entire video on that one subject, so there is some depth to be found within the pages. Another thing I really enjoyed was the depiction of various forms of leadership. Despite what I said about Lawrence earlier, we do get to see his thoughts and how he processes his surroundings, which includes how he should treat his subordinates. He knows when he has to press his troops, when he can afford leniency, and when he has to follow orders, even if he doesn't truly want to. His leadership was based on a balance of experience and discipline, something I've tried to match in my own line of work. There are times to be serious, times to relax, times to shout orders, and times to sit and chat. This was perhaps the best represented element in the book. If you're looking to gain some understanding of what a leader has to think and go through, then this book is not only mildly entertaining, but educational. Overall, it has its problems, but I'd say that His Majesty's Dragon was pretty good. Not a bad time to be had for sure. So, have you read the book? What did you think? If not, do you want to read it now? Whatever your thoughts, comment below and stay tuned for more.